enthusiasm for travel and love for feel-good stories form the heartland of her writing. Working as a designer for 15 years and singing semi-professionally, Lise has always been a creative at heart. Her novels are the result of a quest for a new passion after resigning from her design job in 2017. Since the launch of Lily's Fire in 2017, she has written 11 romantic novels. French Summer 2018 won a Les Frick Bard Award, and Fireflies in 2018 was a Goldie final. Megan Taylor is the author of 4 dark novels, How We Were Lost, The Dawning, The Lives of Ghosts, and We Wait, as well as a collection, The Woman Under the Ground and Other Stories. Further short stories have been placed in several competitions and appeared in a variety of journals and anthologies. Megan lives in Nottingham, where she provides creative writing workshops and courses. And last but by no means least, the dapper gentleman with the lovely pink ensemble, Mr. Simon Smalley. You should write a book. I'll be the first to buy it. The seed of this often repeated encouragement sprouted and blossomed with Simon's participation in the Desire, Love, Identity Anthology project. Upon publication, it was obvious that finally the thousands of words lying dormant within the dusty depths of his computer hard drive should be freed and committed to paper. He relishes this fabulous opportunity as he hurtles excitedly towards publishing his memoir. So, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi.
So let's jump straight in with a question about the books that you usually write and like to write. So Megan, let's begin with you.
Okay, so I write novels and short stories. Most of what I write is usually a bit of a dark nature, but lately I've got more definitely spooky. So yes, it's all become a bit about ghosts recently, which is an early passion of mine. But yeah. So it's relationships, a lot of family secrets and things like that as well.
Excellent. And Julie, what about yourself? What kind of books do you like to write?
Well, I write book club fiction generally, so literary commercial crossover, I'd say. And I would have said that I write contemporary fiction, except my next book, Spirited, is set in 1858. So I've completely messed that up. And also my next book after that is speculative fiction. So really whatever I want to.
You're just playing with the genres fast and furious then.
That's right. I love it.
And Lise, what about you? What do you like to write?
I don't really play with genres. I tend to stick to romance. I write travel romance. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's what I call it. And they're usually set in exotic places and kind of like, you know, escapism. And yeah, I'd like to try something else one day. I'd love to try and write a psychological thriller one day. But yeah, got a lot to learn before I get there. So.
And Simon, you're currently writing a memoir, but I'm assuming with your talent, you're going to try your hand at other things. Is there anything in the background floating around?
I was thinking today that I'd, probably about 25 years ago, I started a novel, having said to someone recently I've not tried writing fiction. And I thought, well, I've got that on a floppy disk, if you remember those, in a drawer somewhere. So I sent off for a floppy disk reader. I'm going to shove it into the hard drive and see if I can retrieve all of that stuff, which was quite dark, I should say, and a few people who read it on printout said, don't come round the house again, please. They locked the doors and ran to the hills. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what I've learned recently, how I can apply that to this thing from 25 years ago.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so can you remember the first time you realised how powerful words could be? Both positively in the right hands and negatively in the wrong ones. I'm going to start with Julie for that question.
Do you know, that's the only question I didn't prepare an answer for.
I knew that. It's like interviewer technique. I could see the panic in your eyes.
Do you know what? The first time, I'm going to say that instead I'm going to say I completely changed my life because of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay.
So I live in this country right now because of Sherlock Holmes. I decided to study English because of Sherlock Holmes. I think decided to become a writer because of reading Sherlock Holmes. So, you know, even it's a popular novel. I picked it up at age 11 and I reread it all the time. And I think those words changed my life.
Massively, definitely. Excellent. And Simon, what about for yourself?
The power of words, trying to think of various things. I think I started off very early with Enid Blyton, good old Enid Blyton, but I've mentioned once before that at school I wrote in English a 10-page fictitious account of going to see discotheques and the sex selettes to a nightclub in Birmingham called Sherry's. I was 12 and of course I'd never been there, but on the power of the single that I adored, I wrote this 10-page fictitious account of it, which my teacher said, fabulous, wonderful, 10 out of 10, gold stars, sort of ticker tape fell from the sky. And then he gave me a right telling off for wasting paper. Don't do it again. It wasn't on the curriculum. Exercise books cost money. So I thought I had the sort of power of making him really annoyed with my words. So that was the only sort of thing I could come up with on the questionnaire to answer.
Yeah. And Lise, for you, can you remember when you kind of realised how powerful and transformative words could be in the right hands? Lise, you're muted at the moment. You need to unmute. There we go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, it's a very difficult question. I was trying to think back to my earliest, and I think it was when I read, so I think this is from Buddhist teachings, but I'm not sure because I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but it said, each living creature trembles before violence, all fear death. And that always stayed with me when I read that. It's made a huge impact on me. And I think it kind of changed how I viewed life and how I even consumed in the end. So I think that's probably what impacted me most. And ever since I read that, I even tried to save an ant from a pool of water. So yeah, that was, yeah, probably the earliest.
And Megan, for you, because obviously you teach writing as well, so it's even more rolled up in lots of things for you.
Yeah, when I mean, workshops and courses, when you see people and they're getting confidence for the first time and they are finding their voice, as people say, it is an incredible thing to see. To see the power of that is amazing, and that's kind of why I do it. You know, apart from everything else, it is just wonderful, as you probably know too, Nicci. Yeah, in terms of myself, I mean, like, yeah, reading from a young age, obviously, finding the comfort of disappearing into somewhere else has been a wonderful thing. And in terms of my own writing, I wrote from an early age, and yeah, I think, and even though I kept my stories to myself for a really long time, they're the thing that I always came back to and gave me a kind of strength and kept me kind of sane or sane-ish.
Sane-ish.
Sane-ish, yeah.
So literary fiction and memoir often deals with heavy and sensitive topics. So how do you balance your emotional demands on the reader whilst taking care of them and making sure you're not triggering them or warning them about potential triggers? And let's start with Simon with that.
I did jot a few lines down, Kelsey, please. I said I didn't think of the reader's emotional demands. It never really figured when I was writing, because my memoir, it's all about me. My sort of tribulations throughout life, and I'm just really ecstatic that anyone's interested enough to read what I've written. So I've sort of got it all out there, but without any thought of sort of mental repercussions for anybody else. But personally, it's been massively cathartic to address a lot of those issues. So maybe I was thinking of my own mental health as opposed to people out there.
Okay. And Megan?
Selfish.
Well, I don't sort of look at writing like that way at all. I'm afraid I don't bear my readers' emotional needs in mind at all when I'm writing. I think a lot of great literature. I'm not talking about myself here. I'm talking about, you know, a lot of great literature.
You can include yourself.
No, let's not do that. But I think it can offer solace and comfort and be a great way of connecting, and reading is all about empathy. But I also think a lot another part of the job of great literature is to challenge and is to disturb. So I'm afraid to say I've never thought about my readers' emotional needs.
So for you, it's the topic that comes first, and you want to get that across.
It's the characters. It's and the things I do to my characters are not very nice quite often. But that doesn't mean I don't care about them.
So, Lise, particularly with Living, you had the attempted suicide right off the bat, right in the beginning. So, were you thinking at the time of writing that how that would be received, and at any point did you think potentially not to write that?
Yeah, I was very nervous about it, and also I've written about addiction and sexual harassment, and I'm always nervous about it, but I do always make sure that kind of not skimming around the topic at all, but romance comes first, and it is a romance, but then life isn't always good and always bad, and I try to pick the positives out of some things that can be devastating, and I try to give it like a hopeful spin.
Yeah.
And I think I like to use those topics because I hope that readers can relate.
And Julie, do you take it into account, or is it just all about the story for you and let the chips fall where they may?
No, well, I started off my career writing very commercial fiction. So for me, my relationship with the reader is always foremost in my mind. I think I was trained into doing that. I know not all literary authors do that, but I very much do. And I think that writing is to some extent a form of reader manipulation. And so I think of that as I write. That doesn't mean that I don't want to upset them. And I do want to upset my readers. I write about sexual assault, I write about gender inequality, I write about death, and some very upsetting topics. But they're there not gratuitously, they're there to provoke a reaction, to bring up these topics, to make the reader think and feel. And I try not to do it gratuitously or just for effect. There are always repercussions. And I always think at any moment, what is my reader going to think about this? What are they going to feel? And try to create those things deliberately rather than triggeringly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And do you think it's, again, a question for all of you, about your responsibility as a writer to shine a light on those darker topics and promote understanding for people that perhaps haven't been, say, through sexual assault, or don't understand somebody that would be driven to the brink of suicide, as well as those people that are actually have lived experience of that and can understand that actually they're not the only ones, and find some sort of community in your words. Lise, you might, sorry, Julie, if you want to carry on.
Responsibility, I'm not sure. I think the author's first responsibility is towards the story. I think that there's no point writing about an issue unless you care about it deeply, and it's something that affects you and that is going to work within the story. At the same time, I think you have a responsibility to get it as truthfully as you possibly can. So if it's not something you've experienced yourself, that you should have sensitivity readers and people to help you with that experience.
Megan, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, yeah, no, I think I agree with that completely. But I think, I think when you're creating characters, they do become real, and so they're issues of whatever nature. You have to take them seriously, and I totally agree about authenticity. With my second novel, I had a character who suffered from postnatal depression, and I was very aware that I had to do a lot of research and not get it wrong. So in terms of that kind of thing, or not get it as little wrong as I could, but because obviously everyone's experiences are individual. But so staying true to the character, but also, you need to do a bit of research sometimes into these other things, so that you're not just, it's not just your imagination when it comes to serious issues.
Lise, what about, do you feel a responsibility to the readers and to exposing them to things they might not otherwise come across?
Yeah, I think it's good when when things are written about, they're often more discussed, and I think it's important to open up the dialogue about things that are going on in the world. And if I could sort of disguise that in a romance so it's easier to digest for people, then yeah, it's scary. It's very scary because you don't want to claim that you think how people feel or think, but yeah.
And Simon, I know you're at the moment at the kind of the very beginning of your writing journey in terms of writing your memoir. It's been cathartic to start to get it out. But thinking about the themes in your story about loss at an early age and growing up in a single parent family with your father, have you started to maybe think about that impact that it might have, the impact that might have on readers?
I hope so, because it was 1971 when my mother died when I was 8, so that had obviously a profound effect on me, but then the rest of the family and quite a close-knit neighbourhood as well. And I think, as Lise was saying, that everyone was saying, talking about things is massively important because nothing changes otherwise, and the more taboos you can break down and challenge things and bring things to light, then I hope that some of the things in my memoir, I know it's shocked quite a lot of my family, some of the things, personal things that they didn't know, but by that way it brings it out into the open to talk about various things without giving too much away before I eventually publish.
Well, on that note, let's have a couple of minutes reading from yourself. And I believe you're reading The T-Rex Shoes, are you not?
Yes, I thought, well, what I've written so far is quite challenging in lots of ways, so I'd have a light-hearted one, which in the edits you did towards the end, Nicci, you said, I shouldn't laugh, really. And I thought, but it raised a smile. Okay. I became an ardent fan of Mark Bolan from the moment I saw him on Top of the Pops shortly before my 9th birthday in March 1971. Mam's death 2 months earlier created a titanic void in my life, and years later I concluded that this television appearance occurred just when I needed something to fill that emptiness. The sultry, captivating Bolan with his group T-Rex could never be a substitute replacement for Mam, but he was definitely a void filler. Exploded by a blitzkrieg of bereavement, my mind had shut down and left me suffused with indifference, despite an abundance of love and attention from Dad, who valiantly assumed the parallel role of mother. Nevertheless, I remained mentally lost in a foreign land where I felt alone and alienated. Mark Bolan, the diminutive, spellbinding creature singing Hot Love, provided me with a passport to escape. It was an arduous route leading out into the light, but, still wearing my mum's high heels, I delicately advanced along a road paved with sequins and glitter. Above me, a jumbled mass of dark blankets parted to reveal a blue satin sky dotted with white feather boa clouds. The mirror ball sun beamed optimism upon me as I began my journey home. I decided that the glamour apparel I created needed augmenting with shoes. Nothing ordinary looking or commonplace, they would be extravagant T-Rex shoes to make people stare. That prospect didn't bother me, as I was used to people gawping at my extraordinary garb. However, such fabulous footwear required the correct approach to wearing it, and I knew just the attitude to adopt. My inspiration flickered from the opening credits of the 1970s sitcom Queenie's Castle. The demeanour of the Grande Dame Diana Dawes in the title role gripped me each week as I sat on the floor in front of our rented telly. Anticipation pricked my skin as I hugged a cushion and revelled in the sensual feel of the burgundy satin, ideas of how I could transform the cushion cover into a hat already materialising. As the opening credits rolled, I always made the same excited announcement, even though I was alone. Here she comes, here comes Queenie. Wearing glossy red go-go boots and a white coat with matching fur collar, the matriarch from a block of stark modernist flats strode haughtily through a bustling street market. The sun struggled through the gritty northern sky, making her flashy drop earrings glow as if her imperious attitude was surging into them. At the busy road, she stepped onto the zebra crossing, arrogantly expecting vehicles to stop, and stop they did. Drivers and passengers stared at the brassy blonde queen of the flats, sashaying insolently across the tarmac, the sun shining on her crown of peroxide hair. I absolutely adored it and spent a lot of time practicing Queenie's walk up and down our backyard. I felt very grown up when Dad let me go on an errand to the corner shop for a loaf of bread. With the handle of my toy red plastic shopping basket resting in the crook of my arm, I swayed my hips so much that I almost fell over. I knew full well that the neighbours were watching from behind the secrecy of their spotless net curtains, but I wasn't deterred. Instead, it encouraged me to get it just right. When I made my debut in the T-Rex shoes, I need to perfectly imitate Queenie's arrogant, traffic-stopping power, even though there were no zebra crossings nearby. The seed of my idea grew in my mind, and I became impatient for it to bloom into reality. How to achieve fruition was a different and frustrating matter. I initially considered laminating slices of cornflakes boxes to make heels and soles, but two big problems quickly became apparent. Firstly, no matter how much I loved cornflakes, and I'd once told Mum that I would have them for every meal if possible, I'd have to eat a mountain of the stuff. That would take years, and I simply didn't have time to wait. Secondly, once wet, the cardboard shoes would rapidly be reduced to puddles of grey blancmange around my feet. Fortunately, the solution to my footwear conundrum arrived sooner than I expected. Of course, it appeared from the usual source, my wonderful dad. Early one summer evening, a drenching rainstorm swept across the city. Majestic kettle drum rolls of thunder and sporadic lightning continued as it departed eastwards. The deluge hadn't cleared the humid air, and everything still felt grubby and moist. The lush green necklace of sycamore trees on the edge of the nearby park dripped heavily onto the steaming pavement as, booming across the rooftops and between buildings, the council house clock struck 6. Simultaneously, the metallic clunk of the back gate latch indicated Dad's return from work. He was highly regarded as a photographer for an international telecommunications company. He frequently arrived home bearing obsolete switching equipment and prototype telephones for me to play with, plus the endless provision of coloured pens and exotic paper. However, on this muggy evening, he struggled to carry an enormous polystyrene box down the path. The distinctive red Kodak logo was stamped on the side facing me. I was intrigued. What had he got this time?
Very nice. It's lovely. And when Simon's memoir is published, I highly recommend it. His dad is just an amazing, amazing man that raised Simon and allowed expression of his personality and his character in just such a free way in the 70s, when it just wasn't okay to be that way, and to be different was just absolutely fabulous.
Very fortunate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.
So I've got an audience question, which is to everybody, and we will start with Megan. Which authors inspire you?
Oh my goodness, there's so many that this question always gets me every time, because you're always going to leave out so many people. In terms of the spooky literary stuff that I'm interested in at the moment, Shirley Jackson is massive. Sarah Waters more recently. But as I was growing up, so much Ghost Stories of M.R. James, Arthur Machen. There was just tons. But I read very widely, so I feel I'm continually inspired. It's usually whatever book I'm reading at the moment. It's like I just read Olive Kitteridge, and I just think the writing there was incredible. It's, so I don't know. That's a bit of a useless answer, Nicci. I'm so sorry, but basically, nearly everybody inspires me.
That's good. I read a quote recently from Stephen King that said, "If you don't have time to read, then you don't have time to write." So it really is, keep reading and reading widely is probably some really good advice for the
I don't know why you would
writer.
Want to write if you're not a huge reader. I don't know. It doesn't compute to me.
So, Lise, what authors have inspired you either currently or in the past?
I would say I have to admit, I don't read much romance, even though I write romance myself. But I love humorous writers. I love David Sedaris and Garrison Keillor and Bill Bryson. And I've read all of Agatha Christie's books too, I think. I've read a lot of Stephen King too. But I'm currently trying to read more romance because it's the genre I write in. And, it's good to mirror yourself against other authors.
And Julie, who in the past and currently inspires you to improve your craft?
Do you know who inspired me in the past and who still inspires me is Ursula Le Guin. I think she's extraordinary. And I read her when I was 11 and wanted to be a writer. My first book that I ever wrote was fan fiction of Earthsea. It was completely copied from it. But I recently, like last month, I reread the Earthsea trilogy, and the writing and the compassion and the humanity is extraordinary. And something like The Left Hand of Darkness, which I think is an absolute masterpiece in every way. She inspires me hugely. What an amazing human being and writer.
Simon, what kind of writer inspire you?
Well, started off as a young lad at Enid Blyton, like a lot of people, and then Agatha Christie, because my eldest sister had all of her the Pan paperbacks. As I grew up, things like Patrick Hamilton I very enjoy much, and H.E. Bates, getting away from the larking things like The Feast of July that's just been republished after many years out of print. That's fabulously descriptive. E.F. Benson, E.M. Forster. So anything that's really got strong visual descriptive content that you can normally tell probably within 2 or 3 chapters if you're going to persevere. And I never give up on a book, but a couple of times I've been quite close to thinking, crikey. So yeah, things with lots of really good, not cliche descriptions, but very unique descriptions I enjoy very much.
Okay, we'll have another reading. So Lise, if you'd like to thrill us with your work.
Okay. I'm going to read from The Scent of Rome. This came out end of last month. And I'm just going to start somewhere in the beginning where Nadine, a high-end escort, meets Rome, an app developer in a hotel in Rome. What are you drinking? I was going to join you and order a glass of champagne. Then please allow me. Nadine gestured to the bartender to order another drink. I'll put it on my dates tab. No, that's not necessary. Please. Nadine smiled as she handed her the glass. I'm Nadine. Rome, it's nice to meet you. Nadine laughed. Rome, are you kidding me? She studied the woman's delicate features for a hint of humor, but she seemed serious. No, I'm not joking. I've never had that reaction to my name before, but now that I'm here, suddenly everyone seems to think it's funny. There's no connection. My parents just thought it sounded exotic, and it's actually my first time in Rome. I only arrived this afternoon. Then you're in for a treat. How long are you staying in town, Rome? Nadine repeated her name because she liked the sound of it. It was unusual, but cute and bold, full-bodied like a good Bordeaux. Depends. If my meeting goes well, a couple of days to round up the contracts, then for a considerable stretch of time after I've gone back to Portland to pack my things. If it doesn't go well, I'll be flying back tomorrow. Let's hope this evening is a success then. It will be a waste of the long-haul flight if you don't get to see anything. Nadine took a sip of her champagne, careful not to smudge her red lipstick. What is it that you do? I'm an app developer. Rome shot her a goofy grin. It's very nerdy. I won't bore you with the details, but I'm here to meet a potential investor. I arrived early so I could take on some liquid courage and mentally prepare for my pitch. Then I shouldn't be distracting you. No, it's fine. It's nice talking to you. It settles my nerves a little. Rome tilted her head, then looked Nadine up and down. Where's your date? He'll be here soon. I came early too. Oh, first date? Nadine thought about her answer for a moment, then decided to be honest. All my dates are a first. It's a paid date, she said, lowering her voice, and clarified. I'm an escort. Rome's wide-eyed reaction amused her. The response was to be expected, but it wasn't like they would ever see each other again, and Nadine felt no need to defend what she did to make ends meet. So he's taking you out for dinner and then you go home with him? Gross, no. I don't sleep with him. It's only dinner. Nadine grimaced. Wealthy men tend to like a younger woman on their arm to impress their business partners. I occasionally sleep with my female clients, though, but only if I really want to and when I initiate it. Free of charge, of course, as that's purely for my own pleasure. I have needs too, and it's not exactly easy to maintain a relationship when you're in this business. Rome seemed even more stunned now as a blush appeared on my cheeks. Oh, so you only sleep with women? Because I'm gay, yes. Nadine locked her eyes with Rome and saw a hint of nervousness in them. What about you? Men or women, or both? Men, Rome answered almost immediately. Husband, boyfriend? Nadine was surprised to feel a little flicker of disappointment at Rome's reply. Not that she expected anything to happen between them, but she liked flirting with women, and it was clear that she was not going to get anywhere with this one. A beautiful stranger who might only be in Rome for one night would have been perfect because it had been a while since she'd had some action between the sheets. No, I'm single, too busy with my nerdy stuff to meet people, and anyway, I'm not that bothered. Rome hesitated for a moment. Can I ask you something? Just out of curiosity. Anything. How much do you get paid to have dinner with your clients? Do you mean how much does it cost to spend time in my company? Nadine chuckled. I don't normally disclose that, but as you have the best name I've ever heard and the best ass I've ever laid my eyes on, from what I can see in that skirt. Inching closer, she decided to flirt with her anyway. She wasn't doing anything wrong, and besides, she liked how Rome blushed when she looked at her. Nadine was good at reading people, and there was definitely something there, straight or not. I'm 1,700 euros a night. Out of the 1,700, I get 1,200, and my agency takes 500. The duration of the date is flexible as a general rule, but I like to be home by midnight. That's harder in Rome, though. People tend to stay up later than New York and Paris, where I did this before. Jesus. Rome frowned as she processed the information. Or maybe she was processing the comment about her ass. Nadine wasn't sure. Either way, she looked flustered.
Very nice. And because we're running short on time, I'm going to go straight to another reading from Julie, if you don't mind.
Unmute and minimize this. This is from Spirited, which is out next month, and which you can pre-order now. And it's set in 1858, and this is a scene that happens in a bathing machine. I love bathing machines. Henriette's buttons were mother of pearl and gleamed like little moons in the shadows. Viola had never before unbuttoned another woman's dress, and this everyday act felt strange. She wore a corset with no chemise underneath, with hooks and eyes, which she must have her maid fasten for her every day. The material was stiff. Even in the semi-darkness, Viola could see the pink marks it made against the skin of Henriette's back. Ah, it always feels wonderful to shake this off, Henriette said, raising her arms and twisting her body so that the corset flopped down over her skirt and she was bare to the waist. She reached back, unfastening her skirt and stepping out of her clothes, leaving them in a pool on the floor, reaching for her own flannel swimming dress. Viola turned to busy herself, folding up her clothes and placing them on the high shelf. What must it be like to inhabit your body so fully, to be unashamed of someone else seeing it, to feel wonderful to shed your clothes? Perhaps because Henriette had been happily married, she could see her body as something to enjoy. Was this what love could do, this transformation into someone adventurous and unashamed and whole? Henriette, Viola began, not sure how she could ask this question, but needing more than anything to know, when at that very moment the world shook around them. The floor juddered, the walls tilted. They're pulling the machine into the sea, Henriette told her, and together they sat on the bench. Viola held tight to the wooden seat as the machine tipped and slid in the sand. Then she heard water splashing around the wheels, and she jumped up to stand on the bench and peer out the window. Oh, we're in the water. The first time I bathed in the sea, Henriette said, it was an isolated cove, and there were no bathing machines, no swimming costumes. It was myself alone. I took off my dress and I left it on the rocks, and I walked out into the sea step by step until my feet could no longer touch the sand, and then I swam. Until that moment, I had no concept I could swim. Weren't you afraid? I think that might have been the first time in my life that I wasn't afraid at all. The machine stopped. The only sound was the water sloshing below them. Henriette got up and opened the door on the front of the machine, allowing the sunshine to flood into the interior. Viola joined Henriette in the doorway, and after her eyes had become used to the dazzling light from water and sky, she saw the silhouette of a man, fully dressed and in water up to his waist. As they watched, he unharnessed the horse from the machine and led it away through the surf without glancing in their direction. Now, said Henriette. She stepped out of the machine, and instead of climbing down the stairs into the water, she launched herself into the air, dress flying, hair loose and blowing around her head. For a moment, Viola expected her to fly. Then she landed in the sea with a splash and a scream of laughter. Her head disappeared beneath the waves and then resurfaced, her hair now sleek. "It's freezing," she called to Viola. "You must come in immediately." Viola clung to the doorpost. From this perspective, she couldn't see the shore, just the sea spread out in front of them in all directions, vast and endless. "Now, Viola, hurry, I'll catch you." Henriette stood and held out her arms, and Viola didn't allow herself to think. She closed her eyes against the dazzle and she jumped. Viola exploded into the water, or the water exploded into her, a blast of cold, a sudden cessation of noise that was a noise itself, a low boom, an immersion, unlike anything she'd had in bath or stream. For a second, she was free and floating, airless and weightless, and then she felt arms around her, pulling her to the surface, and she emerged, laughing up into Henriette's face. "Isn't it wonderful?" Henriette said, and Viola gasped, "Yes," clinging to Henriette's shoulders. Her feet didn't quite touch the bottom, but Henriette anchored her in place against the waves that pushed against them both. "Lie back," said Henriette. "Don't worry, I'll hold you." She lay back in the water as if it were a bed, spreading her arms wide, letting her legs stop seeking the ground and float to the surface. Henriette held her by the waist with one arm, and with the other she reached up and tugged at Viola's hair. "No pins," she told Viola, "let it float free." She felt the plaits and twists undoing, felt her hair fan out in the water around her like seaweed, gazed upwards at the blue sky. The water touched all of her, back, breasts, belly. It lapped under her skirt and between her toes. It no longer felt cold, it felt like a part of herself. "See?" said Henriette, smiling down at her. "Yes," said Viola. She closed her eyes and let herself be unafraid.
Very nice. It's lovely, lovely reading. Looking forward to reading that, Julie.
Thank you.
And now for a little bit of darkness, perhaps, Megan?
Okay, we've also got a bit of water. Like Julie. So I'm reading from We Wait, which came out in November from Erie Press. It's a haunted house story, and it begins with teenage Ellie going to stay for the summer at the country house of her best friend Maddie, who she hopes to be more than her best friend. And a few spooky things have happened to Ellie since she's been there, but in the extract I'm reading, she's very happy because she's swimming in the lake with her best friend Maddie. So if you just bear with me, I'm just reading from the screen, so you're welcome to pull faces because
Can't see us.
I want to see you. Okay. The water wasn't so much holding Ellie as stroking her, patting her all over with its small, cold hands. She rolled onto her back and propelled herself further out, flipping her feet. The sky was growing gauzier, the sun smeared behind a mesh of clouds, burning through in steaming patches. From the bank came a flat honking, and then 3 geese rose, darkening to silhouettes as they passed high overhead. Little dragons, Ellie thought, lifting an arm as if she could reach out and catch one in her dripping palm. While the lake went on shivering against her, the initial shock had dulled, and the cold was soothing where it lapped against her sunburnt skin. Only Ellie's underwear proved uncomfortable. She wished she was wearing a bikini like Maddie, or even better, nothing at all. Ellie grinned at the idea of skinny dipping, of sliding free from her bra and knickers, of watching them flop away like jellyfish. What would Maddie say then? She broke into a giggle, thinking about how she'd already kissed her best friend in broad daylight, a proper kiss, and how Maddie had let her. Maddie was swimming 15 feet away. She wasn't shark-like today, her breaststroke clumsy as she struggled to keep her hair out of the water. Ellie planned to splash her when she came nearer, maybe duck her under. Ellie stopped kicking, floating on her back as she waited. She skimmed her arms in an arc across the surface, and as her palms met, she remembered Maddie's snow angels, a January evening long ago. Coming out of school, the snow had been dazzling, spinning like the snow in dreams or movies, the playground replaced with a pristine blanket. Bobbing in the lake, Ellie felt again how it had cushioned them when they lay down. She remembered the sweep of Maddie's wings beside her, the street lamps bleeding orange into the dusk. And closing her eyes, Ellie could see that orange and a deeper red beyond it, a red that ran right through her. She felt so bright inside that she wondered if the glow might be visible, if Maddie could see it. It was interesting to think of Maddie looking at her for once. For so long it had been the other way around, all that time she'd spent gazing after Maddie, but for now Ellie would keep her eyes closed. As the lake rocked her, she stretched against it, pleased by the length of her limbs. It was a novelty, Ellie enjoying her body. She liked it almost as much as the idea of Maddie looking. And again she felt the shocked delight of their kiss. Would she have the guts to do it again? A wave swelled beside her. Maddie must be closing in, or something was. There had to be fish in the lake. As the thought crossed Ellie's mind, she felt her heel brushed and in the back of her right knee. Black confetti tumbled against the red inside her, but the idea of fish didn't worry her. She held herself as still as she could and felt a sliding along her spine, a small nudge against her shoulder. She imagined herself surrounded, the soft press of friendly snouts. The lake was so calm, so beautiful. Anything that lived there had to be friendly. Ellie didn't think she'd ever felt so at peace. Her fears seemed incredible now. She could easily imagine making this place her home, living here with Maddie forever. Under the surface, the touching grew more insistent. Ellie felt a circling pressure, tracing a slow line down to her waist. She thought of little shining fish mouths opening on her skin, not biting her, but tasting her, a gentle nuzzling. But perhaps there weren't any fish. Maybe there was only Maddie swimming closer, only Maddie's fingertips, Maddie's lips. Ellie didn't dare to open her eyes. She heard the sky creak and then grumble. The thunder sounded muffled far away, but a thin breeze lifted alongside it, bringing a scratchiness to the air. But Ellie, stroked, kept to her own darkness, her own redness. She tried not to move, even as the first raindrops broke open on her upturned face, even as she heard Maddie calling. "Shit," Maddie was saying, "storm's coming, we'd better get in." Maddie's voice fluttered at a distance. She was nowhere near Ellie, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Ellie felt the touching as a kind of glittering, cool rings of pleasure moving down from her waist. There was a second, louder crack of thunder. "And Elle," Maddie shouted, "we've got to go." But Ellie was barely listening. Beneath the licking waves, those small, cool hands were caressing her, slipping over her hips and then sliding gently between her thighs. "Come closer." Ellie wasn't sure if she thought the words or heard them whispered. The hands had become more playful, slick and scurrying. Her breath fluttered faster. She felt on the brink of dissolving, and still those small, cool fingers went on unfolding her, pulling her deeper, closer, tugging her under. Down and down Ellie tumbled, spilling away from the thunder and rain and from Maddie, who was splashing and yelling somewhere above her, crying out again and again. But all Ellie felt was a delicious unravelling, a stream of bubbles spiralling up and away from her as the lake closed around her, wrapping her like snow.
Wow. Everybody wants to know what's in the lake. That's brilliant. Lovely selection of readings there. Very eclectic. I love it. So we've got a time for a couple of questions, if that's all right. So for everybody, how do you create the chemistry between your characters? And let's start with Julie. Oh, you muted.
Yeah, sorry. I think the chemistry between characters sort of creates itself. I do a lot of character work before I start writing, and I really know a lot about their inner conflicts and about their motivations. And I try to make those as contrasting as possible between characters. And so I think that sort of conflict often causes the chemistry. I started out my career writing romance, and really the whole point of writing a romance is to keep characters apart as long as you possibly can, or keep them from having their happy ending together as long as you possibly can. So I think conflict creates the chemistry.
And Lise, how do you go about creating the chemistry between your two leads?
I guess I make them very different from one another. And then there's a challenge of writing it that way that the reader thinks they'll be a great match, whether they are or not. And yeah, I like to make them very different. But I don't plot, I don't plan my characters. It's just something that grows while I'm writing. So once I get to know them, I'll go back and rewrite.
Megan, for you, how do you go about that?
I like them to have a lot of insecurities and things that they're battling about in themselves, as well as I'm quite interested in unrequited love as well. I think that that's always an interesting topic. But I think as well, there are moments when you use those, particularly when you're writing love scenes, when you use those special moments that have happened to you, and not in a terrible, oh my God, everybody's material way, but just in a, you know, I think with everything with characters, whether it's love or fear or anger, you often go back to yourself and expand it. And I think that that's where a lot of it comes from.
Okay. Simon, slightly different question for you.
Yep.
So people write memoir because they have lessons and experience that they want to share with people. What prompted you to begin sharing this part of your life, and why?
Why? Because I think talking to a lot of people, just gabbing on about my life and experiences, so many people said, you really should write a book, you know, you really need to read a book, write a book rather. And at one of my brother's funerals 6 years ago, I sort of held court. And after that, I had sort of like semicircle people just hanging on to every word. I thought, you're not going anywhere yet, I'm not finished. So I just kept going on with tale after tale, trying to lighten the whole miserable day, really. And after that, my sisters and most people said, you need to write a book. So that's really what prompted me to do it. And then finding out about the desire of identity was just an absolute magical gift that I thought, this is a make or break. You've got to do something with all those words in there.
Absolutely, and now you are.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Okay, so we've just about run out of time. So I want to say thank you very much to my lovely panelists and authors for taking part in this panel tonight. Thank you for the attendees and the audience and for your questions. There are some questions that we haven't had a chance to get to, so I'll be sending those to the authors, putting together a document and then popping that on our Clear the Shelves Facebook page. So starting at 8 o'clock till 10, all the authors from all the 5 panels today are going to be there, and we'll be organising little breakout rooms for you to talk to authors either individually or in groups, and we'll just move stuff around. So we're not quite sure how that's going to work because I've never done it on this kind of scale before, but we'll work it out. So we'll just see how we can organise it and just stick it on, and we'll work it out together.
Thank you so much, Nicci. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicci.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
so,
fabulous.
When this ends, hopefully a link should come up in your Google or Bing or Explorer if you've got that open. That's a link to a survey. So if you can just spend 2 minutes just to say, just to give your feedback on this event, this panel, that would be marvelous. Thank you very much, and I'll see you hopefully in 8 minutes, everybody. All right, cheers then, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.